Hello and welcome to Inside 11Alive News Investigates. I'm Ron Jones. Today, a Metro Atlanta woman is now speaking out. She's upset a federal program failed to fulfill its promises despite 4 years of waiting. Beverly Storey helped her husband file a claim with the CICP. So that's the Countermeasure Injury Compensation Program. Senior investigative reporter Rebecca Lindstrom here to explain what is that.
Yeah, that is a mouthful, the CICP. And then when you start thinking about what each of those letters mean, right now, the CICP's focus is to help reimburse people impacted by COVID-related treatments. There are more than 13,000 claims from people who say they were injured in some way by a countermeasure or treatment for COVID that the government asked its citizens to take. And while most of the claims relate to the COVID vaccine, there are also claims for the use of ventilators and drugs like remdesivir. Here's a look at the first time we met the Storeys in 2023. Frustrated.
I wrote President Biden. I wrote Senators Ossoff and Warnock.
And who have you heard back from?
Nobody, except you.
Frustrated because Beverly Storey and her husband Alan did what the government asked. They got the COVID-19 vaccine.
It was just like a bolt of lightning.
Days after Alan's first vaccine dose, he experienced strange and life-threatening health problems.
His mind was 100% working inside his body. His body just couldn't move.
Doctors eventually diagnosed him with an acute brainstem stroke. Alan had recently had a full-body health screen, so his wife suspected the stroke had something to do with the COVID vaccine. She noticed a reference to the Countermeasures Injury Compensation Program, or CICP, on the vaccine paperwork. Did you know anything about the CICP before this?
Never heard of it.
The Storeys are not anti-vaxxers. You got vaccinated.
I did.
Your daughter got vaccinated.
She got vaccinated because we were the caretakers.
But they believe there are a small number of people who have had an adverse reaction. The government knows it too. That's why the CICP exists. The question now, what will they do about it? Alan can no longer work, and Beverly had to quit her job to provide him full-time care. But instead of helping, the CICP became one more challenge.
The burden of proof is 100% on you.
His medical records were scattered across 5 hospitals.
I sent them everything.
But nearly 2 years later, she has nothing to show for it.
You don't get any answers.
After we reached out to Senators Ossoff and Warnock, the Storeys did get a call, but neither office seemed familiar with the program, and both declined to talk about a bill introduced hoping to make the process easier and more transparent.
What about the people that this happened to that have never heard of it, don't have the gas to get in the car and go and beg for the medical records?
We also reached out to the Department of Human Services, the agency responsible for running the program. It wouldn't talk on camera either, or say why. It wouldn't even say how many people it's hired to work on the COVID-related claims.
How many people work there? 3? 4?
In a written response, it said 80% of the requests for benefits are submitted without the proper paperwork, and that the law sets a high threshold for compensation, a bar set by Congress so high that out of nearly 11,000 claims, the CICP has only approved 12 so far.
They're like an insurance company that's just looking for reasons not to pay you.
Rebecca, this is horrible that this family is going through this, but do you think that this is possibly a case that just fell through the cracks, or is there a bigger issue here?
As you can tell from that date when we referenced originally talking with the Storeys, we have been covering this for several years, and you're going to hear as we talk how some of that data from that first report has changed. But, the issue initially was just transparency. We had no idea how many claims were even being filed and for what. In response, the federal government did create a webpage where now it updates basic data every month on how many claims have been processed. Were they denied? If so, why? When that process was moving so slow, though, we started looking into staffing. And for months, as we said, our open records requests and questions just went unanswered. And that's when we started reaching out to lawmakers in Georgia. Government accountability. Has the program functioned the way you expected?
I would argue the program hasn't functioned at all.
Randy Seegers is talking about the CICP, Countermeasures Injury Compensation Program. It is the federal government's promise to reimburse unpaid medical bills and lost wages for injuries associated with COVID-related care.
And I woke up and could not move from the chest down.
Randy found himself paralyzed from the chest down 10 days after getting the COVID-19 vaccine in September 2021. Here's a quick comparison of his life before.
Very active. My wife would always laugh at me and say, you know, you never sit down.
I know you spend a lot of time sitting.
Almost all of my time sitting.
Randy says doctors diagnosed him with transverse myelitis, an immune system disorder that may have been triggered by the vaccine. He is one of the 13,000 people to file a claim with the CICP.
For a while, every time I called, the same person answered.
That's because for a while, there were only 4 people working in the office. Now 11Alive Investigates has learned there are 38. At this congressional hearing in February, Georgia Representative Rich McCormick asked the CICP director what that means for people like Randy.
How many claims are we processing per month now?
So in the year 2023, we processed 90 claims per month over that year.
I just don't think it's right. I think we need to streamline this process.
Representative McCormick did talk with the CICP director earlier this year after we made his office aware of what was going on. In fact, we've told every U.S. representative and senator in Georgia. 9 responded. Representative Buddy Carter expressed frustration that millions of taxpayer dollars were going to a program failing the people it was created to help. But no one had concrete solutions, and most lawmakers referred those impacted to contact their office. While that can't hurt,
Is there like an insurance company that's just looking for reasons not to pay you?
Alan Storey says it may not help either. We have followed his claim for 2 years. Despite reaching out to Senator Ossoff's office, their case is trapped in medical review, like everybody else, which brings us back to the same place we started.
There seems to be no accountability.
All right, so looking at that story, we know that Congress controls this program, right? So once you got lawmakers involved, did anything change at all?
Well, it did. They appropriated more money. That helped them with staffing. They definitely ramped up some staffing. They also were able to get computers to put the process online. I mean, that's right. Before, this was not online. There was no online application. Everything was going through the mail. Workers, which remember were only 4 people to start, were having to input everything by hand. And while they also gave the CICP more money to hire that staff, a report by the Government Accountability Office released at the end of 2024 said the CICP was having a tough time keeping them. That high of 38 workers was down to 29, and the contracts that had been signed to help review the medical claims had dropped in half. And perhaps that is why this month, when we checked back in with the stories, the news wasn't so good. They can't tell you if there's 10 people ahead of you, 100 people. Beverly Storey's kitchen counter creates a timeline of her husband's 4-year battle with the Countermeasure Injury Compensation Program, or CICP. She never thought that the COVID vaccine would trigger a cascade of health problems, or that she would still be fighting the federal government for compensation after he died.
He literally walked in healthy, and 6 days later, while he was cooking dinner, all of a sudden, whoa.
His medical journey started with a brainstem stroke and ultimately ended with cancer.
You know, he said, I was one of the unlucky ones. He was just full of grace, and he was very courageous.
While Alan courageously battled illness, Beverly battled bureaucracy. His claim is one of more than 13,000 filed with the CICP. Of those processed, 11Alive News Investigates found 98% have been denied, most for missing the filing deadline. And some, like Dahlonega resident Randy Seegers, were denied because the CICP didn't believe his injury was connected. Has the program functioned the way you expected?
I would argue the program hasn't functioned at all.
Others were rejected for not submitting the requested medical records.
I said, you have got to be kidding me.
Beverly feared that might happen to Alan's claim when the CICP said it didn't have proof he actually received the vaccine.
That's what they wanted. If I didn't have it and didn't have a copy 4 years later, it would have been denied.
She shared the application form with 11Alive showing that information was on it.
They've had it 100% because you couldn't do it without it.
The CICP has paid 34 claims, all related to the vaccine. Most people have received around $4,000. A report by the U.S. Government Accountability Office blames staffing and technology challenges for the rough start. And while Congress gave the CICP more money under the Biden administration, recent budget and staffing cuts raised new concerns. Our request for information has so far gone unanswered.
During this process, I've realized most people, even if they did have a computer and were able to do it, would have given up. They would have given up.
Randy Seegers has appealed his denial, so we are still following his case, and Senator John Ossoff's office is trying to work with Beverly to see if it can break that logjam. I will say another valid delay in the process, the GAO pointed out, is research. The program has a high threshold for an applicant to get payment. This is taxpayer money, and it is taking some time for the medical community to really access what the long-term impacts from some of the COVID countermeasures could be. But Ron, I will tell you, at this pace, it would still take more than 6 years to process every claim that's been filed so far.
And when you talk about compensation, what is the actual timeline to get reimbursed by the CICP?
Yeah, I mean, here again, we're talking about years and what they compensate. This isn't like pain and suffering. These have to be tangible costs associated with the impact. So we are talking about costs, your health insurance copay or treatment that didn't get covered, maybe lost wages. There is no money for pain and suffering, and that's why most of these payments are so low. We said about $4,000. There is, though, one claim that the CICP determined was the result of a COVID treatment, but there were no real out-of-pocket costs, so the person, even though the claim was approved, didn't get any money. The highest award by far, though, is a person diagnosed with a rare blood disorder. That person received about $2.5 million. But again, those are tangible costs associated with the care that's going to be involved in that illness. And again, most people just getting a few $1,000s.
Yeah, 4,000 between 2.5 million. There's a huge gap there. So.
But it tells you how severe the reaction was. It probably means that this person is going to be permanently disabled. So this is money that's going to cover the wheelchairs or the nursing care or the lost wages. Nobody with at least this program is getting this check and saying, oh, I got rich off of this.
Yeah, but I'm glad that you guys, your investigators, are staying on top of the story. We really appreciate that. And thank you for watching us as well, folks. But if you have filed a claim with the CICP or you have a tip for Rebecca, we would love to hear from you. You can contact Rebecca or any of the other members of the 11Alive News Investigates team by calling 404-873-9111 or emailing investigates@11alive.com. Thanks for joining us so much for Inside 11Alive News Investigates. Have a great day.